and we are live on YouTube with Miss Kryshonda Torres. How are you doing, Miss Lady Ma'am? I really appreciate you coming on my show, The Lunatic Libertarian. I am just Alumnus coming live with Miss Kryshonda Torres. So we're here to talk about health and wellness, and I want to say thank you for coming on the show. And how are you doing this evening?
Well, hey, friend, it's good to see you. I mean, we've talked several times. We finally were able to link our calendars up to talk health and wealth. I am better than I deserve. How are you?
I'm doing very well. I'm changing my path right now as far as my career to get out of being a mule and be more of a mind worker. So that's one thing that I'm very, very thankful for. How are you these days? I know that you are on the very much promoting men's health this month. So I want to see how you're doing.
So yes, it's as you said, I am in health and wealth. I just retired about 4 years ago from the Air Force after 6,594 days. Yes, we do count every single second that we serve. So that's about 20 years and 9 months. And then I began the journey of becoming a health coach. To be honest, Jess, it really started because my mother had ovarian cancer and I didn't know how to help her while she was going through chemo, and something felt off, but I couldn't tell you then what it was exactly, what bothered me about it. And once she made the transition, that was my entrance into health and wealth. As my favorite poet Lizelle Graham has said, every woman who heals herself basically heals her children's children. So you mentioned June being Men's Hormone Health Month. Yes. So we have a theme each month for what I focus on for health coaching. And this month is Men's Hormone Health Awareness Month because, I mean, it's the month of fathers, it's the month of men. Why wouldn't we focus on your health and how to keep you fit, right? I understand that the role of the mother is important, but so is the father in the family.
Yes, and I have three children of my own. I have an 11-year-old, a 10-year-old, and a 3-year-old. Two are of completely natural births, uh, no interventions, and non-vaccinated. And then I have another son that is born. Uh, my wife was she not only had an abruption at like 28 weeks, and then she was hospitalized for another like 6 to 8 weeks. It was an all bad situation, but my little man is here, and I'm happy for the interventions that promoted his health. But I would still like to see what would have happened if I didn't have any steroids or anything else in his life. But yet again, in the ICU, he was not vaccinated. This is all during the beginning of the pandemic, and when you talk about what happened with your mother with what was it, pancreatic cancer?
Ovarian cancer.
Ovarian cancer. My mother had lung cancer metastasized to her brain, so and she passed away when she was 41 years old. I'm 40 years old, so just to put that in perspective, I was 19 years old when I was serving overseas when I got the news. So do you think that people nowadays don't understand where their food is coming from nowadays? They think when they go to the supermarket that it's the best product that the government says that is good for them. Other than, do you think that somebody should actually go out and produce their own product so they have the security of knowing where that food source came from?
It's a great question you asked, and I absolutely agree. And here's why. When we go to the grocery store and buy the food, you don't know where that food is coming from or how long it's been sitting there before you get to it. You can often do, I tell my clients, just you can often do a test like with the bananas. If they have those little black spots on them when you see them, it means that they artificially ripened them. They didn't naturally ripen. And so those are, one of the things that you can do to notice if you buy fruit. Like I've had clients who bought strawberries, right? They bought them the first day, they've had them in the fridge for maybe 3 days, and they're like, hey, I just bought these 3 days ago, but they already have fuzz on them. What's up with that? And so, yes, if your food is coming from somewhere else, You don't know how long it's been there, how long it took there, what pesticides, herbicides they put on it to ripen it in order to be shelf worthy to sell. So I do believe that we should grow our own food. I do have a medicinal garden and a vegetable garden that I'm growing myself.
And so, just understand that you know that every medicinal purpose that we have that's manufactured by pharmaceutical companies comes from a natural source, from a knowledge perspective. So, do you think that people need to also understand that they've been branded as something that is more of a test subject other than a human being? Because they're only sold one thing, especially in the United States, because everybody else, when you go around the world, I know you've been around the world, they look at us like we're like ideological idiots because we don't understand that Mother Earth will give us the resources that we need to be able to heal ourselves, not only in our physical sense, but also in our spiritual sense.
Absolutely. You bring to mind when you mentioned that, I thought about when my time was when I was in Germany. Okay. That was my absolute favorite assignment. The food was always fresh. The fridges are not even the same size as our fridges are here in the United States because the intent isn't for us to buy a bunch of frozen food and stock it up in the refrigerator and then get to it when you get to it. It's to eat fresh. I remember we used to go to the little markets right in the town that I lived in at the time, get the brochin, the fresh brochin, the fresh salami, the fresh cheese. And interestingly enough, just as much as I ate over there, I was still in the best shape of my life versus now we're in the United States with the processed foods because there's a lot of chemicals that we use in the States that the EU bans that they will not allow you to put in foods. They will not allow you to put in personal care, but it remains unregulated here in the United States.
And we can get into that because there's over we can get into glyphosate for the first chemical that's put into our foods. That's in pretty much everything that you can think of that's grown. And Monsanto's behind that. And maybe this podcast will be banned just because you mentioned them certain names. But the thing is to get the information out to everybody that this is what is on your actual food. And when you talk about there's another product that's in the especially when it comes to like buns or white breads that is even more carcinogen than Monsanto's glyphosate. But people just don't understand that it's in the food. It's in the food. It's in the food all day.
In the health coaching world, what we like to say just is the more white on your plate, right? When you're looking at the food that's on your plate, the more white on your plate, the more inflammation in your body you create. And so that's what I try to share with my clients to remember. Your plate should look like a rainbow, lots of color, lots of reds, lots of oranges, lots of the more green, the better, especially the cruciferous vegetables like broccoli and the like. Um, and that's a guide that we use based on the integrative nutrition plate. We don't follow the my plate. IIN, which is shout out to my school. That's the school I got my health coach certification from in out of New York. We follow the integrated nutrition model. So no dairy, right? Lots of water, healthy fats and oils, vegetables, whole grains, and then in addition to it, managing your own what we call primary foods. So your relationships, your physical activity, your career, and your spirituality. Because if there's a deficit in one of those areas, that might be why you're standing in your kitchen at 3 o'clock in the morning stuffing your face with Twinkies.
Now, what do you think about the current food pyramid that was put out by the United States Health Administration as far as like you have what was it, Lucky Charms placed above beef steak, and then you have other high sugar based food products that are placed beyond natural grass fed protein products. I mean, what do you think that message being propagated to the American people sends when we talk about natural substance that actually gives you the energy you need to prosper in your life?
I don't follow that pyramid, just, and I don't recommend that one to my clients. Like I said, we use the integrative nutrition model, and in that one, there is no dairy, again, because casein, 75%, in particular, the clients that I service, 75% of African Americans are lactose intolerant anyway, right? Instead of drinking lots of dairy, we recommend lots of water, meaning half your body weight in ounces of water to flush your system. Your skin is your biggest organ that you have. You can't flush it by drinking milk. You flush it by drinking water. Um, that you People like to say moderate sugar. I don't agree with the moderation because sugar has been classified now as a recreational drug. They found in studies that it's actually 8 times more addictive than cocaine and heroin. So if you can actually detox yourself from sugar, that's with the help, of course, of a health coach, nutritionist, or a dietitian. That would be my recommendation. That's what I help my clients do. Now, does that mean they never can have sugar again? Just absolutely not. We go through a detox so they can see the difference, and then we make for the allocation that if they want to bring it back, they do it in moderation with natural things. And when I say natural, I mean instead of Splenda, which if you use Splenda, please throw it away. One packet of Splenda, according to the Duke study, is basically like dropping a napalm bomb, and you will understand that lingo on your gut health. So, in other words, what we train clients to do is instead of reaching for Splenda or the pink one, what is that one? Sweet and Low. I don't even remember the name. Or the blue one, to instead use like monk fruit, natural sugar, or stevia if you absolutely have to have something sweet. Because again, we're consuming too much sugar. We drink bad water, we eat bad food, processed food. We take too many pills, antibiotics, steroids, birth control, and we're chronically stressed, which is creating conditions that researchers have now called autoimmune disorders, first world problems. Let that sink in for a minute. They're saying that's first world problem, that we don't see the same things that we have in America in what you would reference as a third world country because they don't have the same level of stress. They're not walking around like we are. And so it's important for us as Americans to understand the SAD. That's what I call it, just the SAD, the standard American diet. It's sad. It makes your plate sad. Yeah. It makes your gut sad. That is not what we should be subscribing to.
I don't think that you're wrong in anything that you're saying because I believe that if you are a person that is a skill set individual that understands that my nutrition embodies what I propagate as a human being outwards to the world. So my projection out into the world comes from the nutrition that I take into my body, and then if you want to take into account what people hate about society currently politically, they say that the mass markets are the problem. You don't give me choices, but I, I think that it's all first world problems, and in my humble opinion, because if you go to a third world country, what we consider it as, because supposedly that has the most violence, that has the most poverty, but then when you look at the streets across certain demographics in the United States, you can see the same exact scenarios of poverty and the degradation of humanity and so forth. And we have politicians out here that are saying, oh, well, we're going to solve these problems for you, but humanity needs to solve its problems for itself. So, what do you think of what has happened over 20 years? This is a question 20 years, so we're going back to 2003. What do you think has happened as far as Americans' nutrition, public schools wise, and then into the pyramid that has been from the CDC and the WHO and everybody as far as what is proper nutrition? And we have seen it just completely slaughtered when it comes to the facts. When it comes to mass demographics, it doesn't matter if you're white, black, brown, yellow, pink, purple. what we're being told is a lie when it comes to our nutrition. Do you agree?
I absolutely agree that when it comes to our nutrition, we're being told a lie. You just made me think about the statistics. I was trying to pull it up while we're talking regarding obesity. I'm pulling it up right now. I believe I saw something. Yeah, that's it. I knew that's what I was looking at. 45% of the population in the United States right now just is living with at least one chronic disease. So that tells us the difference between 20 years ago and now. Not to mention when we look at the children, right? That one, I think it's one, I'm looking forward right now. One quarter. So two things, two other things. I knew I had notes on it. Not because you asked me to have it prepared. It just when you said that, that triggered something I had looked at earlier. So nearly one quarter of the global population will be obese by the year 2045. That was another metric that I had studied. And obesity now from 20 years ago. Now that wasn't the case 20 years ago. Now from 20 years ago, obesity impacts 1 in 5 children and 1 in 5 adults. So that should tell us where we are currently at as a nation from 20 years ago. We're not moving in the right direction, obviously, because obesity is now a problem. Not only is it a problem, but when we look at our medical bills, I think it's 2 trillion was the last number I looked up, our year that we spend to treat preventable conditions. Just so when I say preventable, I'm talking about diabetes, high blood pressure, high cholesterol. And some of your viewers may be like, well, Kryshonda, what do you mean by preventable? Meaning that those can be treated with diet and lifestyle changes.
I think it's funny that even right now, New York City mayor presented himself as a New York City police officer and said, "I was this class. I don't know if it was class one or class two diabetic, but the doctor said that you needed to do this, this, and this to correct your illness." When we know that diabetes is a 3 or 4 billion dollar business in the United States, when we talk about the equipment, the medical supplies, and we can go on and so forth. When we talk about there is not a medical industry in the United States that is for wellness, it's not for health or wealth. It is for the a systematic destruction of humans that is put out here to say that I need to make a profit off you because you are our business model. Now, you and I know this, but what do you think that needs to change as far as our mindset as human beings when it comes to our self-awareness that we have our own responsibility to take care of ourselves and what we ingest into our bodies so that we don't go to Chick-fil-A, McDonald's, or Burger King, or all these other chain restaurants, that we get the satisfaction of, yes, I feel that, satisfied that I got this hit of dopamine and everything else that rushes to you when you're eating these foods. But I mean, where is our self-awareness that, we really need to get back to the law of the land of producing our own products and understanding that what we're putting into our bodies needs to be accounted for as human beings.
Well, I will tell you, it starts with first, we have to, and I say we, so the health and wellness industry has exploded. That's, as you know, the industry that I'm in. I will never be unemployed because of your point that you just made right there, with people not understanding that their health really is their greatest wealth. It doesn't matter how much money you have. All you have to do is look at the life of Steve Jobs. He was a billionaire, but he couldn't buy his health back. Okay. So having money doesn't solve all of your problems, because once your health is gone, there's nothing you can do to get it back. So first, it starts with personal accountability, Jess. Again, you can eat the cookies, you can eat the cakes, you can eat the pies, but look, you can smoke the cigarettes. Look, I mean, you put it in the camera, you can smoke it, but when you also have to deal with the consequences of what comes along with that. And so, to your point about Mayor Eric Adams, I watched his story. I followed his story. He was absolutely right. He was pre-diabetic. And the doctor was getting ready to put him on a prescription med that he would have to take for the rest of his life to manage his diabetes. And he said, give me 3 weeks. For your audience, just in case they didn't see it, he said, give me 3 weeks. He went on a plant-based diet just for 3 weeks. Not only did he reverse it so that he no longer has diabetes, he then turned around and helped his 80-year-old mother, who'd been a diabetic as well, get off. That's basically what Dr. Ben Lynch calls epigenetics. We have all these cells in our body, cancer cells, all these different cells, but your lifestyle and your diet is what Dr. Hyman, Mark Hyman, I'm sure you're familiar with him, one of the functional medicine docs, basically genetics, because a lot of people like to blame their genetics. Genetics loads the gun. So get that mindset. Genetics loads the gun, but it's your lifestyle and it's your diet that actually pulls the trigger. And you have the ability, by taking responsibility for your health, working with, your health coach, nutritionist, dietitian, who's ever a part of your medical team, which you should have, because you are the only person who lives in your body. It doesn't matter if the person has a white coat on and they're a doctor. Nobody else lives in your body, so nobody else knows what's going on in your body, and you have to be able to advocate for yourself and communicate that, right? So if you're in a doctor's visit, which usually is what, 20 minutes now, because you can only really tell them what your main issue is. They don't allow you an hour to go through everything. So if you're saying, okay, my back hurts, what should be happening, which doesn't, and that's where health coaches come in. And I want you to hear me, Jess. I don't have a problem with doctors. I'm a huge advocate for functional medicine and naturopathic doctors because they believe in whole body systems and resolving conditions. But what typically happens is when you go into a doctor's office in that 20-minute appointment, she can only address that one concern. And so they don't have the time to ask you, okay, Jess, are you getting 6 to 8 hours of sleep? Are you drinking half your body weight in water? What was your diet like last week? Let me see your food diary so that we can make sure that we're working through these issues so that my first response to you is not to prescribe a pill. They don't have time for that. So that's where we come in as health coaches and helping with that. But again, ultimately, it's on the individual as well to say, I love myself enough that I want to be here for my children, that I want to be here for my spouse. Because here's the thing. I ask my clients, I don't have patients, I'm not a doctor. I ask my clients all the time, because people make that statement, I would die for my kids. You know that statement, right, Jess? You've heard people say that? Well, I like to flip it. I like to ask them, of course you would die, but would you live for them? Would you live for
That's
them?
exactly it. Would you live for that person? I have a question for you because I ask people this a lot, and it goes back into how much a part of an experiment are we willing to be a part of? We have lived thousands of years as human beings with certain diets, with certain demographics, and certain individuals. Because we are now so integrated across a global climate, um, where do we get back to our orientation of our roots, which I think everybody wants to get back to because especially in the United States now, there's this rhetoric going around that, well, my heritage has been stolen from me. But when you really dig down into the history of it, I think every bloodline is pretty much traceable in the United States.
And I would agree that they are traceable. And I would also agree when you mentioned the heritage, again, speaking from the health perspective. I'm Hispanic and black. I'm Puerto Rican and black, right? So and I'm a Southern girl. I live in the South. So, we eat the collard greens and the cornbread and the nana pudding and that's all heritage. But then again, that can't be the reason why. And I say this just because I have to. Again, my client base is specifically African American women. That's who I serve. But again, June is Men's Hormone Health Month. So what I often have to tell my clients is I know what our culture is. I know how we ate growing up, right? I know we ate the nana pudding, we ate the collard greens, we ate the cornbread. But that's also because that's what we had then. Now we can still eat some of those same things, but we don't have to eat them the same way. We don't still have to put the fat back in the collard greens. Does that mean you can't enjoy your food? No, you just may have to modify some things to be healthier.
Well, and another thing is that when individuals were ingesting that food product, they were expending so many more calories and trying to produce a product, no matter what the industry was back then. I mean, you can go back to let's go back 1890s to the 1900s flat, where you had boxers that could fight 130 rounds, and then the next day go right back into the foundry and work 13 to 17 hours. I mean, that is extraordinary compared to a 12 round prize fight now where somebody trains for 4 months and doesn't have to do anything but go on vacation until their next fight. You know what I mean? It's actually quite extreme, the comfort in which we live in nowadays compared to even let's go 60 years ago. Let's go back to the 1960s, right? I mean, it's extraordinary we can even say 60 years ago in 1963 was probably one of the most uh, uh, turbulent times in American history, if you can think about it. You know what I mean? And if you put that into perspective, and you and I'm a 40-year-old man. I don't. I'm not going to say your age. I don't know what it is. I'm going to leave it alone.
I'm in that. Look, I'm in the vein. Southern women don't tell their age.
I'm just going to say that I think that people need to understand that we had an American president that was assassinated in that time frame, and that would be ridiculous in today's time. So the 60s, I love to say that United States is one of the countries that got taken, where people got put in check was the 60s. The JFK, RFK, Malcolm X, Malcolm. The people that were trying to actually change society for the better to encompass everybody. Um, Now, my personal perspective, and I've gotten a lot of flack about this, but I'm a lunatic, and I'm going to say this. I do not think that the civil rights movement was the greatest thing that happened to black African American or African descendants of slaves in this country. I don't think integration was the greatest thing that happened. I think that what happened there was a massive land grab and money grab by central banks. That's my lunatic idea, is that if we didn't have the civil rights movement, I think that this country, because we had massive land ownership by black people in this country before civil rights, we had maybe it was separate, but you had communities that were burned down, covered by lakes now. I can go into massive amounts of history, but I'm not gonna take this to a racial side of it. I just think that if people understand that their health depends on what they take out of the earth, and that the earth will give you back what you put back into it, and that uh, 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 it's not about what money is about. It's about what your family should ingest, and the energy that you put into the food that you ingest should come into the production of that food. And that's why I think that having a garden, or even if you live in a city, you can have maybe one or two chickens. I don't know every ordinance, but I think you can have at least one or two chickens in every city in the United States. I'm sorry, I can't spit it out, but um, I think that people need to get back into production versus the consumption side of it, because we don't need Taco Bells and McDonald's on every corner.
And to your point, I'll touch on the civil rights first. Bob Woodson, I'm sure you're familiar with him. I think he's almost 103 now. He actually talked about that, the fact that in the 60s, in the 70s, basically in the 60s, to your point, before the welfare state, before Lyndon B. Johnson came up with his plan, 97%, specifically African Americans, 97% of African households were two parent. So I'll just leave that point right there to touch on that before, right? And if we look now, before and after, okay, to your point about the food, again, going back to my history, my grandmother, I didn't even know what a cheeseburger was just until we joined the military. There was no going to Taco Bell. There was no eating out. Every meal was fresh. We had chickens, we had ducks, we had cows, we had hogs. Hogs were the male pigs with the tusks that had to be kept away from everybody else because they were a little ornery. But all of our meat was fresh. Exactly. All of our meat was fresh. And I don't remember ever being sick because of that. Like I remember getting off the school bus at 3 o'clock and dinner was already ready. And I'm talking about hot water cornbread, crackling cornbread, fresh. I remember her wringing the chicken's neck to make the chicken stew for dinner. We have gotten away from that. Now you're lucky if you can find somebody. Again, I'm in my 40s with you, so I can cook. But now this generation, I mean, some of them can't even boil water. So, so we are definitely in trouble. Hamburger Helper is not where it's at. That's still a processed meal.
They can't even cook that. But that's the problem. They can't even cook that. They can't. We grew up on in the '80s. I'm sorry, in the crack era. If you had hamburger helper, you were rich. In my neighborhood, if you had an actual like branded name and hamburger helper, you were rich in my neighborhood. I mean, if it we ate all the garbage that was like from the pantries, and it was like 30-day old meat and all this other shit. That
I mean, but we also stayed outside. We played outside in the summer until the porch light
Yes,
came on.
we had the sun on our face. We didn't worry about what was going on. We had the sun on our face, and that I can go down a whole nother rabbit hole with that, Miss Air Force. Uh, but let's keep it on the health and wealth because when it comes to individuals, what they ingest and then the output, everybody's talking about what should I get? What should I get? Nobody's talking about what they should input into their lives. Everybody's talking about, well, exercise. If you talk to it's what is it, H3 Klein, or I forget the one H3 Productions. I forget the one podcast. He was like, well, exercise is you have so much time to do everything else than exercise. I'm sorry, but the work that human beings had to put into survival 100 years ago, 100 years ago, if you were to put in less than like 14 and a half hours in one single day for your individual survival, you would die. You would literally die within 3 to 4 days if you didn't put that work in. So, um, we have the inner cities talking about, well, I need to put in work to get the money and get the dollars, and that's desecrating another portion of the human race. And then we have the corporate world saying that I need to get the money, I need to get the dollar, and they're desecrating like 90% of the population. When it comes to goods and resources, you and I know that there's been no big giant change in production. Why is a 12 pack of Pepsi now 12, $13 versus a year and a half ago it was 3.99. It goes into perspective of where we are as far as our society and who actually controls where society goes as far as its societal demographics when it comes to economic resources.
Well, it's not just
And
big pharma. You mentioned big pharma, we were talking earlier, but there's other big players in that. There's big dairy, big beef, big egg, big sugar. And I know people listening are probably like, oh, they're conspiracy theorists and they're making it up. If you actually watch the documentary, What the Health, I don't know if you've seen that one, just they actually showed on it. Like that was the thing that made me go vegetarian first before I became pescatarian. But he showed an internal memo where they were planning to murder the guy who came up with egg beaters because it was interrupting the cash flow of the big egg industry. Like that's not a joke. That's for real. It's all about dollars and cents for those industries. And unfortunately, we're the product. And if
well, it's funny because even when it comes to now, it's weather modification, and it goes into how much uh, um, water can we control versus how much the consumption of. When we talk about, there's documentaries out there talking about blood and feces of pigs and mass agricultural farms being spread all over like North Carolina and Virginia. It's ridiculous that people don't understand to survive this. I can get my food at the grocery store. There is a huge cost. I live in Wisconsin. Mass dairy it's ridiculous. There are 300 to 400 gallon pools on every farm of just literal feces, cow waste. But it they call it black gold because it's fertilizer
We
for
call
mass ag.
we call it black cow down here. They bag it and sell it at Lowe's so you can put it in your garden.
We have become manipulated to the fact that we need these mass agricultural systems. We need these mass production systems because the ignorant peon is no longer the producer anymore when you call to the kingdom. If you go back to Old England, the peasant used to produce. Now the peasant produces games and what is it? It's circuses and games according to the Roman emperor's system of distraction. Give them what is it? Games and give them circuses and games and I'm drawing a blank, but you understand what I'm saying as far as like old Roman times when they had the Colosseum. It was give them games and circuses, and then when your civil liberties were being taken away from you, nobody was paying attention. And if we see what's happening now with the economy, we're $32 trillion in debt, according to right now real-time debt, but in real time, we're probably $92 trillion in debt according to the interest rate that could be imposed upon us if everything closed down right now. Everything was called in as far as the central banking system and said, United States, pay your debts all right now. It's $92 trillion, which that's an astronomical number. It's astronomical. Like it shouldn't even exist.
It really, when I think, I mean, let's go back 3 years when we, under the previous administration, when we, yes, we had debt, but it was not to the level that it is. We seemed to be booming. We had actually, for the first time in history, become independent, energy independent as a nation. Not only did we have our own energy source, not only did we have our own oil, but we had created and stockpiled enough to sell it to other countries. You look at it now, I mean, to get into the political lane, right? Just the prince of Saudi, the king, yeah, the crown prince. That's it. The crown prince of Saudi doesn't want to talk to us anymore because of the current administration that we're dealing with right now. They're looking at us. We're not looked at as a superpower anymore. We're looked at as the weaker beings. I mean, we've got Mr. I'll say it nicely, Mr. Biden falling down on national TV, not projecting the image of strength and power. We've got inflation, as you said. Like when we get to the point as a nation where a burger is $7 and a salad is two, then we may see a shift in the health and wealth aspect. But right now, when you're dealing with a family that is dealing with these hard financial times and they've got to make a decision between, okay, can I afford to get the organic food in Whole Foods, which I like to refer to as whole check because it basically almost takes your whole check to shop there, right? Or can I get enough meals for the next 3 days by going to McDonald's? I don't recommend it, but I'm just being realistic here in this conversation. When we're talking about people's coins, we can't speak for other people's coins. And until we as a nation can make it where, like I said, a salad is $2.50, or you can get a salad for $1, or you can get a nutritious meal for $1, and the unhealthy food is the more expensive, we're going to continue to have this conundrum.
Well, when you talk about a person's coin, when I was a very poor single male, I lived on uh, a blow up mattress, okay, and I didn't have any furniture in my apartment. Um, but when I understood when I was broke what my calorie intake needed to be for the day. If I ate $3, and this is when McDonald's had the 99-cent menu, if I ate three cheeseburgers in a day and I expended almost 2,000 calories, I knew I was calorie deficient by the end of the day. And I knew that I can maintain my weight. This is one thing, and bless his soul, Captain Russell Seeger, he was like, you need to stop eating one Jack's pizza every day. I said, but if I eat one Jack's pizza a day, I know I get my calorie intake. And this is one thing that, even if it's garbage calories, if you're expending those calories, you can survive. And this is one thing that always perplexes people when you talk about prison inmates and how they can build muscle while eating ramen noodles and powdered milk and cookies. It's all dependent on how your calorie outtake is versus your calorie intake because you can eat all that garbage and still produce. You may not be the most healthy. I'm not saying that you're healthy, but you can produce quite a physique, and you can produce something that most people wouldn't think is the outcome of the calories that your intake is. But it just depends on what you're putting out there. If you're a lumberjack chopping down trees every single day, you are going to have a physique, something different than somebody that is a programmer that is in front of a computer for 10, 12 hours in a day. And that's just the way that it is. Output versus calorie input. And if you're a producer of goods and services, that's more important, in my opinion, to the human race as far as you're producing crops. Look at farmers. Farmers are some stout individuals. If you look at, and most of their family are wrestlers, and there are some big individuals.
I mean, you can't
Um,
help but be stopped when you slinging cows all day, slinging cows, slinging hay. Like you don't even have to go to the gym when you come from that type of background because everything that you do on the farm is either anaerobic or an anaerobic exercise, and so you're still getting your exercise.
and that's what I mean is that I think that there's so many Americans that are disillusioned by I can go to the supermarket, but they don't know the energy output that is needed to produce that outcome for them. And I grew up in the city. I didn't know where my food came from. I came out to the country and then I found out, oh, it is different out here. I mean, you hear about, oh, well, there was an altercation in the city, somebody got shot. Out here, it was there was an altercation, somebody got thrown through a window, and yeah, there was no involvement of any law enforcement or anything. It was hush hush. This individual was hurt for a little while, and that's just what it was. In society, and I try and tell people, it does not matter what labels, titles, and categories you abide by. You will see human life prosper no matter what. Dependent on how much input you put into your human life, you will see that output. And it's funny if you go on YouTube, there's plenty going out there now about. I'm a Norse pagan. You are a Christian, and I believe that we are both on the same moral path as far as the outcome of what we see of each other, because we're not waiting on anybody else to do for us. We are going to produce an outcome for the betterment of each other. I started getting into numerology, and when you get into the number nine, because my birthday is 1/8, the number nine is kind of trippy. So um, you should get into that one too, because um, it promotes what we're talking about is that we want better for the all of humanity. It's not just about me or you. It's about everybody that's surrounding us, because that energy is always going to be better for everybody else. Because that's what transcends human beings, is that energy that you put off.
And I like to ask questions that cause people to have to think. You mentioned the fact that we have different faiths, but that we can still have conversation, right? Clarity over agreement. I believe in clarity over agreement. And so I often ask people, especially those who claim to be believers like me, when it comes to your health and wealth, what if God called you to do something, but you weren't physically able to do it because you're overweight? Because you don't work out. It doesn't matter if you can bench press the whole gym. You can drink all the protein you want. It doesn't matter that you can bench press the whole gym. When you encounter spiritual warfare, which everybody at some point will, right? Because there's only two sides, God's side and the devil's side, right? So you got to choose which side you're going to be on. If you haven't developed your spiritual muscle, you won't even be able to beat a baby demon with two arms and two legs tied behind his back. So to me, that's why it's important not just to work on your physical health, but your spiritual health. Like we talked about in the beginning when we started talking, what we call primary foods. Spirituality is a primary food. If you don't have whatever your faith is, if you don't have something to believe in to hold on to you, right? Your anchor, you're going to try to fill it up with those things: bad food, alcohol, drugs, illicit sex. But that's the space that only God can dwell in. If you don't get a hold of what's going on in your physical health, it's going to manifest if you're not taking care of yourself physically. And I don't mean, I have to tell a lot of my clients, because they're like, well, you mean exercise, so you want me to go to the gym for an hour and do all that? I'm like, no, bro, I really don't. You can walk for 11 minutes. Studies have supported that you can walk for 11 minutes, a brisk pace. Don't walk like you walk around your house, but walk for 11 minutes, and you can actually reduce your mortality risk by 25%. The point is, your body has to be in motion. If you sit in front of a computer for 14 hours a day, no, you cannot walk around for 10 minutes and then tell me, well, I don't understand why I have this gut. I don't understand why I'm obese. No, everything ties into one another. If you're not managing your mental health, like I told you when we first started talking, that's why you're standing in front of the fridge stuffing Twinkies in your face at 3 a.m. in the morning, because you haven't addressed whatever it is that's going on in your life. So the two actually work together to help you be a more productive human being. And you said something earlier that I want to go back to. And someone in the comments said, humans are meant to work. We are meant to work. Back when we were hunter gatherers, right? Instead of sedentary right now, we followed more of what you would call the paleo diet. Now we had to go out and hunt and gather our food. And there were times that you couldn't guarantee that your next meal was going to be there. So you would eat enough to carry you through. You would eat enough energy to carry you through. And then you would train your body how to fast, because in that period where there was no food, your body was burning the fuel that you stored up from eating to carry you on until you got to your next meal. And we've lost that ability. I mean, I teach my clients how to intermittent fast, because that's a great way to put your body in the state of ketosis without doing the whole all of that saturated fat from following the actual keto diet. Again, God has given us everything that we need. That He's given us every fruit-bearing herb, every seed that we need to be healthy. We just need to get back to looking at that, studying that, and understanding that. And we wouldn't have a lot of the conditions, to your point, that we have. Because let's say something happens and there's no more cities. The people that, well, you again, look at what we're living in right now. Look at the times we're living in right now. Let's say there's an apocalyptic event happening. Do those people who live in cities know how to grow their own food, know how to hunt and gather, know how to defend themselves? If not, if something happens, they're going to be in trouble, right? That's the first place that Russia or any of our enemies can start, is the cities.
Yeah. Well, most of if you look at any of the stories that have been written in books or through cinema, most of them start where the cities are the first place that's detrimented, it completely wiped out. There is no survival if you live in those populated areas, because resources are limited, because they're always imports. And this is one thing that I try telling my family, is that you may live in a city and have every kind of commodity convenience that you want within 3 miles. The thing you're not thinking about is, how do you have that? If trucks aren't running, there's no modern convenience. If uh, the factories aren't running out in the country, there's no cheese, there's no this, there's no that. So commodities, especially now that we're on the PO system, pay as you go, people don't understand that it's a as you go society. They found out during and I'm sorry, but I'm going to say the word plandemic, not pandemic. I'm going to say plandemic. That's another rabbit hole. But you and I, we can talk for hours about because of our experiences within the military. We understand how systems work. We understand how um, we were trained to be defensive units against what's now happening. And I left the military in 2004. I could have had my 20 years in a long time ago, and I wanted to do 20, but circumstances, weren't in my favor at that time. So, but I understood when I went into the military, the cooperation when you stand and take that oath and say that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign or domestic. We are literally in those times. Literally. I don't think the founding fathers put us there, but I think we are in the majority. Now, you once told me on Clubhouse that you were leaning more towards libertarianism. I know you support Ron DeSantis, and I support whoever you're going to support as far as your personal choice. That's your personal choice.
Well, okay,
Um,
let me just stop you there, Jess. Look, I am still leaning because I was disgusted we had this conversation on Clubhouse. I'm married to my husband. I haven't picked a politician yet to be married to for the purpose of politics. But what I have done as of late is go in person to each of the candidates and see what their messaging is. Like Vivek, that's how you pronounce his name. Vivek Ramaswamy has said some things that I'm very impassioned about with the 230 and the administration, right? DeSantis has said some things that I'm like, oh, okay, okay. Trump has said some things, given again that they are turning him into a martyr by the way that they consistently persecute him, right? So I haven't picked one, but what I have seen is they don't take the same oath that we took. And you're absolutely correct because some of these behaviors that have been enacted, for example, you know, the Southern Poverty Law Center labeling parental groups as hate groups simply because they are advocating for parental rights, that's and labeling them as domestic terrorists, that is not upholding your oath. The DOJ being
yes, that
weapon,
that one.
yeah, the DOJ being weaponized against American citizens. I'm like, am I the only one who's confused here watching what happened on Saturday with the pride display? And let me just go ahead and make my disclaimer. I don't have a problem with your lifestyle. If that's your lifestyle, that's between you and God. What I have a problem with is the fact that the flag protocols were broken. The fact that as a veteran who served, who understands that there is no flag that is supposed to be on equal footing with the American flag, that is supposed to be level with the American flag, that the American flag is not supposed to flank any other flag. It is always supposed to be front and center, right? That's what I have a problem with. It's almost like this current administration is working at a accelerated pace to try to undo the things that the founding fathers put in place. And let me just say this, just now, the founding fathers weren't psychic, but it appears that they were with the documents that were created. It's almost like they could see some of the things happening. And that's why the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and the Declaration of Independence were written the way that they were written. I don't have a problem with labels. If Thomas Jefferson were still here or any of the founding fathers, they'd probably be labeled as hate group and extremists right now by the Southern Poverty Law Center because of the things that they stand for. But like how we fell so far, so fast is the part that takes my breath away.
What's funny is what I found out just a couple days ago is there was a Georgia Democrat, and I don't have my notebook in front of me, but his plane was shot down in 1983 by a supposed Russian or USSR anti-aircraft missile. Okay, if you were to listen to that Democrat today, he would be a far right Republican. I forget his name, but he was talking, and it was an interview with Buchanan. He's a Republican now and been in office for many years. And now he's got those children's books that are Christian leaning. And then he had another person, and I forget I don't remember his name, but I saw an interview that he gave, and then he was killed right after that interview when he was talking about societies that want to take over. Now, it's kind of funny that Klaus Schwab can go to Antarctica. You and I cannot.
Or that he could write a book called The Great Reset, but you say The Great Reset, they'll call you a conspiracy theorist.
Well, I'm not gonna deny anything. I am currently listed as a domestic terrorist because I threatened to blow up a police department a few years ago. So, and these were only words. And what's funny is when I talk about my case to people, I say the court commissioner, which is not even a valid preliminary hearing, as far as what I understand about the law now. You went up before a court commissioner, and this fucking guy said that even though the chart we do there's no even though there is no validity to the charges, we still have probable cause,
It's, of course, we don't
which
have
is
any.
wild. It'll make you think. But beyond me, when we talk about what's going on now politically, I know you are a woman, correct? You are a woman, yes.
I am a biological woman, yes. 2X
You have a womb, and
born that way, no medical
okay.
alteration.
Okay, and you are black, correct?
Yeah, birth to children. Yes. I
Okay.
identify today, if it will benefit me, just as a rich white billionaire named Alexis Carrington.
Almost spit my beer out, but that's hilarious. I have to say that on this show, I talk to it doesn't matter who labels, titles, categories that you want to buy by. When I say that you checked all the boxes as far as what's happening in society today, you are a black woman, you are conservative, you are an Air Force decorated veteran, you are an entrepreneur, you are an individual that has you're conservative, you're married, you have a relationship, that you have a bond that's produced children, and it's not anything that anybody can take away from you. And everybody wants to say in this country that that is a controlled outcome. You are a controlled outcome.
I'm also in the same category. They would put me in the same category as Candace Owens. What do they call her? I've been called on Clubhouse. You've been there. A coon, a bedwench, and Uncle Tom, because I don't subscribe to the I have to be oppressed because I'm ethnically black. Again, I was in the Air Force for 20 years. I rose to the rank of E7, the top three enlisted ranks. No, I wasn't oppressed. Yes, I am happily married to my husband for 11 years together, 13 years. We raised two children. So to me, I have a different worldview because I have a different experience. And that's also because of my parents. Both of my parents were retired Air Force veterans as well. We have a family heritage, a tradition of honor and legacy of valor of serving. And we don't let my mother, and the funny part, Justice, my mother was from Edenton, Georgia, right? Grew up in the 50s. So she went through racism, she went through Jim Crow, but that wasn't an excuse for why she didn't become great. She did. She saw what happened. When she was growing up with her parents, she joined the air. She made a decision, and that's a lot of what it is. To your point, especially with the racial culture we're dealing with the white fragility, white a ability, white supremacy. I hate that word. They use that word for everything that they don't like. I think Oprah, and I'm not a fan of Oprah just, but I'm gonna use her words because I think she captured it the best. I don't like her, but what she said was fact. So whether I like you or not, if it's fact, I will give you credit. She said, "You are responsible." There's that R word for your life. If you're waiting for someone to come and help you, to come on and save you, to come and fix you, you are wasting your time. And to me, that was a powerful statement.
That is facts, and she's not wrong. The reason that I'll hate on Oprah, and you're gonna trip why. Um, I got banned from Twitter because of Oprah. I called
You
her
got banned
the
from Twitter?
I called Oprah a larger than life um, Australian and UK expletive that is not really used in the United States. And then I mentioned Jeffrey Epstein, and this was 3 years before Jeffrey Epstein didn't kill himself.
Well, it's funny that you got banned because now Dave Chappelle is talking about her and exposing her, and he's still running around here. You know, Dave Chappelle, Brown Dave Chappelle. I mean, if you wait long enough, this is what I've learned. You don't have to tell your side of the story. If you wait long enough, time will.
You are absolutely correct. And I do. And one thing that's funny is this one thing that I get into the boxing rooms on Clubhouse about is if you were to look at me um, as you see me in real time now, would you say that I am a white individual?
I mean, they would say you're white passing you. I see some a tint. You've been outside in the sun.
Oh no, this is how I look pretty much all the time. If I were to show you my daughter, uh, she is a spitting image of me, and she's been out in the sun, and she is 5 shades lighter than you, I would say.
Yeah,
She's dark. She's dark.
I can definitely tell you have some color. Definitely can tell you have some color.
I don't think that it should matter anymore, especially in the United States. I think that people are overprivileged in this country. They have an over an abundance of convenience. I think that people were afraid to slap their children into reality back in the day because of we that would be us.
But that's not
There is a
like
there's a
I
gener
go ahead.
there's a generation of us out there that were afraid to smack their children into reality, say no 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 no. This is why daddy said this. This is why mommy said that. Because sometimes there wasn't a mommy, there wasn't a daddy.
I mean, the family unit is the foundation of society. Let's just be honest. That's why Satan is working so hard in this current culture to destroy the family. I mean, that's why Lyndon B. Johnson, when he came up with his plan for the welfare state, that's my husband. That's why, yeah, he's in the back dealing with the kids. See, um, that's why his plan was okay. Well, you've got to get the fathers out of the home because when you get the fathers out of the home, when you get the mothers dependent on the government, when you make the government their father, then you can control the situation more. You can get them to do more. I mean, again, look at what we have. Bob Woodson said 97% of homes had mommy and daddy in there, even during right after slavery, right after Jim Crow. Right now, I think the percentage is 75% is single parent homes.
Uh, Actually, Krishan, I brought this up to my wife. Is that I think they attacked, and this is something that yet again I've been crucified on Clubhouse on. Is I think they attacked the white man first because of the microwave wheel or microwave meal or the stovetop meal or the TV dinner. What that was probably the most primary that was caused is the TV dinner. And there was an epidemic of white males dying at 50, 52, 53, 54 of heart attacks for 30 years in this country. But yet again, nobody wants to talk about that. Now, my grandmother, bless her soul, she's 80. She's the only one left. My mother is dead, and her youngest daughter is dead. My grandmother is still alive, and She only has one living child, and she's the center daughter. Um, it's just it's a simple fact of going back to that. She was pigheaded enough to say that I'm not a part of this system. She married a Puerto Rican man that was from the island, and 100% she was an Irish and Polish and German woman in 1959, marrying a 100% Puerto Rican man.
Yeah, I mean, breaking the mold. That's what I look at with my parents. My father is Puerto Rican from the island. My mother was a brown girl from Georgia. They met in the military. They married and had three children. And then they not only did they marry, right? They stayed married in the military throughout their whole entire career. Both my parents retired. And then they continued to be married after retirement. When my mom passed in 2016, my parents have been married for 40 years. So when you have these conversations, and let's be clear, you can't really use Clubhouse. You don't want to use Clubhouse as a microcosm of reality because you can't really believe that there are people walking around that think like this in real life. But unfortunately, there are. To them, it's a foreign concept. Like to them, there's something wrong that my parents were married and stayed married. To them, it's something wrong that I then followed in their footsteps and got married and had children with a husband and then had a career and now sit at home retired. It's a foreign concept
You're
because
under control. Somebody's controlling you.
no, it's that I'm not joining the rhetoric of that I'm oppressed. No, I'm not. I'm not oppressed. I have a wonderful life. But it's also because, as the person in the comments, woman in the woods said earlier, it's because I worked for it. The Bible says faith without works is dead. So you got to have faith, but you also got to put in the work. And then that's the part I think is missing from society today. Not just uh, 18, not just I just lost my train of thought. It went to what she was saying. Well, yeah, when you turn 18, like my life, I'm responsible for my own life. I believe that. I believe that about everyone. I've heard, yeah, I've heard the oppression argument, which I'm sure you've been in rooms that my parents didn't, my father didn't, my brother didn't, and my thought is. Once you turn 18 or 21, I'll even give you till 21. Let's give them till 21, just. Once you turn 21, you're responsible for your life. You don't get to blame your family, your upbringing anymore because now you have control. You can make your own decisions. And it's the decision making that is lacking in our country because we're not teaching critical thinking in public school. Instead, we're pushing the wokenati agenda, ideologies, and biases instead of actually how do you take care of yourself? If 1 + 1 is 2 and you don't have $10 for the $20 purchase, how do you feed yourself for that night? I mean, it's regular math, basic math, reading, not this. Well, if Bobby has 10 apples and Susie has 3 apples, and Susie has to give away 2 of her apples, how much equity does Susie really have? Like, what is that?
We all know that the skill sets that are uh, sent down to the next generation is the most valuable. We all know this, and it just isn't a production of as long as the next generation can survive. Excuse me, excuse
Oh,
me.
no worries. Can they
Sorry.
survive though? This next generation, I mean, I call them the marshmallow generation. You put water on,
Um,
they melt. You tell them they can't have,
well,
they melt.
I'm going to go into a little bit of a dissertation. Just give me like 2 minutes, because I think when I had to turn the switch on in the military, it was a switch that I didn't want to turn on, but it was necessary. And there's not many people that can, talk about it. It's something that is that, yeah, your 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 normal occupation is this, and then you have to do this. This is your other job, and whatever. When people had to grow up back into the 1800s, you had your knights, and this is what we're taught in United States is English history. So you had your knights, and then you had your squires, and then you had your peasants, and then you had your serfs, and so on and so forth. So, when it comes to the hierarchy of the individuals that really produce an outcome, and I think that's the only thing that relates to every human being on this planet. It's a production of an outcome that is better for everybody. Now, when we are commercialized to say that we have to have Gucci or Prada or Tommy Hilfiger or and back in my day it was Gerbode or whatever. That was real hot in like 2001. So how do we get people to get back to the reality of food, water, shelter, clothing? The old what was it? Jungle Book, the bare necessities, simple bare necessities of life, versus the I need a $650,000 diamond chain that had the diamonds dug out of the ground by a child with an AK-47 to the back of his skull to make sure that he wasn't stealing.
I mean,
You know what I mean?
I used to laugh at preppers, but now I admire them. You know what I mean? Because they were onto something. How do we get back to that, Justin? I would say the public school system, but I'm a fan of defunding the federal Department of Education and starting over, because 45 million Americans are walking around illiterate, so functionally illiterate. So what's the purpose of the Department of Ed, right? It needs to go back to the state level. Yeah, yeah. There's actually a bill on the floor, HR 899, for defunding the federal Department of Education. I'm a fan of it. I do support it, because those are things, the things that you mentioned, how to be able to farm, how to be able to take care of yourself. We used to have shop. We used to have home economics, right? When we were growing up, those were required as part of your public education to graduate. Now, I heard in Oregon, if you they got rid of the standard to be able to read and do math just so you can graduate, because they wanted to make it equitable to everybody. Again, that's
What? What the fuck? What? Hold on. Say that again. What the fuck?
that the standard, you know how you take those standardized tests, because there was a certain group that was struggling in Oregon, they came up with removing that from a requirement to graduate from high school, right? Now, like in South Carolina, where I'm at, we've added personal finance. That's what we should be teaching. I've got the fact that you need to know mathematics, addition, subtraction, multiplication, division. I don't know about the algebra and all that other stuff unless you're going to go be an engineer and need it, because I've never used EMC square to pay any bill in my real life, right? But personal finance, you do need to know. You need to know how to balance a checkbook. You need to know how to stay away from credit card debt. You need to know your income to debt ratio. So that's a requirement to graduate now. That makes sense. Agriculture should be something that's required to graduate. Like you said, how to farm, how to grow your own food. Like you have to grow a garden over one semester and it has to successfully produce a harvest. Those are things you see in the homeschool community that is not standard in the public school. Civics, how to have civil discourse instead of labeling somebody transphobic, homophobic, xenophobic, and a bigot because they disagree with you. Okay, that was my daughter. You need to learn how to be able to have discourse to say, okay, I disagree with your opinion and here's why. Instead of resulting to, because you're white, you got to be it's you're white supremacist if you disagree with me, right? Again, I homeschool my children. And let's be clear, I told you I was in the Air Force, so I was in the corporate world. That decision didn't happen until the pandemic occurred, because my daughter had an incident in public school that instead of going to choke the teacher out, I decided I would just pull them out and homeschool them. And so the beautiful thing about homeschooling is you get to craft your children's education. I want them to learn civics, so that's a part of their homeschool curriculum. I want them to learn gardening. That's a part of their homeschool curriculum. These are things, again, these are life skills we should be teaching in public school, but we're not. Instead, we're teaching ideologies and we're teaching biases, like if you're white and I'm brown, you're my oppressor and I should hate you, which is not helpful for us as a society. We are more divided now than we've ever been. Like we've got, again, you see this. You can if I was a psychologist, I would just go sit on Clubhouse in the rooms and use these conversations that are happening. You've been there, as case studies for how far we've fallen as a society.
Oh, you're absolutely correct. And the one thing that I've always presented is was like, okay, so you have a 6'2" black man, 6'2" white man, 6'2" brown man, 6'2" red man, 6'2" brown man that is Arabic, 6'2" Asian man. You're all in the squad. Okay? Who's running point? No one's raising their hand. Oh, who's holding the radio? No one's raising their hand. Oh, because you know what? At the end of the day, you know what you know what the fucking platoon commander says? You're all fucking targets. You're not fucking special. You're all fucking targets. It just depends. It doesn't matter upon your race. Doesn't matter upon your creed or color. It depends on your position in this platoon as your importance on an objective that needs to happen according to what our enemy's perspective is. That that's it.
That is
I don't
one
give a fuck.
That's one thing the military does very well that society could take a lesson from. When you go downrange, I know you've heard this said, there are no atheists and there are no racists in foxholes. When it's time to point the M4 downrange, we're all in the same direction. Whether you're black, white, Puerto Rican, Haitian, whatever your nationality is, we all bleed red blood. But that's one of the things that the military community does very well that I think society would do well. Like if someone wanted to conquer us right now, one of our supposed enemies, because we haven't actually, the Constitution says you actually have to declare who your enemies are. Never heard anybody declare that China or Russia is the enemy. Not that they're my friends, but I'm just saying I'm following what it's actually what is written. If you actually are declaring that these people are our enemies, if they wanted to conquer us, all they have to do is keep allowing us to destroy ourselves right now. We're so busy, you're white, so you're wrong. I'm black, so I'm right. You discriminate against me because of this, instead of actually looking at ourselves as one race, the human race. This is what I'm gonna go Bible on you now for a second, Jess, but that's what the Bible says. Acts chapter 17, verse 26. It says, from one blood he made all nations. We all are humans. So we need to learn how to work together and get along, right? I understand that bad things have happened in the past. I've studied history, right? The real history, not the revisionist history. But we can't stay there. How do we move forward as a nation? America is an exceptional nation. We have people fleeing from Cuba, Venezuela, Russia, China to come here. It's still the bastion. Does it mean it's perfect? No. But it is still an exceptional nation that was founded on biblical principles. You can find, if you go look at the Constitution, I think there's like 34 different direct citations in the Constitution that came from the Bible. We have become a nation that has moved away from our original foundation. And this is what the founding fathers were afraid of when they created the Constitution, right? Their vision was small government, big citizen. Do I make sense? Just right. So it was, okay, you go to Congress or the Senate or the House of Representatives for a specific amount of time, and then you return back to your community to live under those laws, those ordinances that you created. So you have to experience the laws that you made. What we have now is big government, little citizen. We have people who have gone to Congress who've been career politicians for 50 years, who've never lived under some of those rules and regulations that they've made that are hurting us, the working class, the everyday citizen. And that was not the original intent of the founding fathers.
Would you believe that those like yourself, myself, as veterans, we swore an oath to the Constitution, and I don't know how the Air Force has their boot camp graduation. I only went through the Navy graduation, and it was you swear an oath to the Constitution, you're going to abide by the orders over you, but you know that you're not going to abide by an unlawful order.
Correct. There are an instance where you can disobey an order is if it's illegal, if it's immoral, or if it's unethical.
correct. So when you look at what we have seen with Iraq and Afghanistan for over 20 some years, we have a base in this country that have been in conflict, multiple tours, because our military is not 300 million. Our military is 1% of the country. Um, so those individuals that have been on repeat tours and have problems reintegrating into society, but those individuals understand what that oath meant. Those individuals have implemented something against even maybe their moral code, maybe, but they understand the United States Constitution says it doesn't matter who you congregate against, just as long as you're not taking their things or being violent. Doesn't matter what religion you practice, just as long as you're not violating the rights of other individuals trying to practice their own religion. Doesn't matter. We need freedom of the press. We need free information for all. Free information for all. That comes from 1776. It's but the Department of Education has dictated that, oh, well, now you're a part of Henry Ford's assembly line. You need to do this and you need to do that. And then we can't even feed our children healthy.
I mean, you're right. We need to get back to our basics. I mean, that's what I can say to your point about us as a nation. We need to get back to wholesome, nutritious meals. We need to get back to family time, making time for the family. We need the fathers back in the home. Yes, I understand you got to work, but our other fathers were able to do it. They were able to figure out some type of balance. And when we're in the home, we need you to be present as well.
Holy shit, Krishana, I just realized we're like at an hour and 21 minutes. Wow. I told you, girl. We can go on for hours. Let's wrap this up. I just want to say this real quick is that as the United States is going into the realm of clown world of central digital bank currency, controlling of the food with all the conspiratorial with Bill Gates and Al Gore and climate change. Um, I was going to interview the Libertarian Party prospect presidential candidate Chase Oliver, who made all the ruckus down in Georgia this past electoral midterm, and say, hey, in 2005, um, everybody in Congress was talking about weather modification, not climate change. I will leave that right there. That's going to be our next discussion because that goes into energy waveforms and all kinds of other things. But what is your immediate suggestion for human beings right now to get out of the matrix as far as health and wealth? And wealth does not necessarily mean the almighty dollar, which doesn't mean jack shit right now.
I would say for health, definitely take care of yourself. You also, and what I mean by that is, as we've talked for this almost 2 hours, get invested in your community, make friends with your neighbors, right? Because there may come a point where you have to do bartering and trading for food and items. So you might not have the garden, they may have the garden, and you may have the chickens. You want to make sure that you know each other before that occurs. They may have the goat that you need to make your goat milk or goat cheese. I would also say to take care of yourself physically, get your water, get your exercise, work on your mental health, because if that dark day comes, or I should say when that dark day comes, we already experienced it the first time with the pandemic, and I'm sure that there's going to be a round two, right? You need to make sure that you're in the best physical shape that you can be in and the best mental space that you can be in to deal with that. Your children. Definitely, again, I'm a huge proponent for homeschooling because again, it's driven by by the needs of the family and the child versus the public school system. Again, we see the public school system is failing. 2/3 of fourth graders can't read on grade level. So I definitely would say, and that's not a Krishonda stat, that's from the National Literacy Institute for Literacy. So I would say making sure that even if you can't, I understand people have different financial situations, so maybe you can't pull them out of homeschool right now, but doing the extra reading, the extra math, the extra writing. Why do they need to write in cursive, Krishonda? I'll tell you why. Because the founding documents are in cursive. You can't read the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, if you don't know cursive. That's why it's important to have that as part of the
Put
education.
that work in, parents. Put that work in, parents. We
Correct.
had to learn it. We had to learn it.
Correct. Again, for me, I don't co-parent with the government. They weren't there when they cut my two babies out, so they don't get to tell me, how to educate them, what they should know. Now, I'm willing to listen to some feedback that you may want to give me, but this comment that was made the other day on the news that these are our children, no, they're not ours. We don't have no custody agreement. You're not paying half their expenses. You're not doing anything for them, so you don't get to tell me nothing about them. God gave them to me to train and raise and then send out into the world. And I'm going to do it to the best of my ability. So that's what I would say. Take care of your health, take care of your children, and be prepared.
I thank you very much, Shonda. I'm glad that we were able to make this happen, and it's almost 2 years into the making because I asked you and the serial killers and everybody at the club. I was like, "Come on, be on my podcast, be on my podcast." Didn't happen. You happened with Kryshonda Torres, and you're killing it as far as letting people know where their health lies. And health is wealth. Get that sea moss in you. Go out there, expend them calories. Stop sitting on the couch. Like David Goggins said, get
Yeah,
your ass off that couch and go after it. Make life happen for you. Don't wait for life to happen because it's not going to unless you make it happen for yourself. I'm an unlimited libertarian. We're an hour and 30 in. This was wonderful. I gotta have you back. We're gonna make this kind of like the Joe Rogan type contribute situation. Health and wealth. We're selling products. Get out there. KasandraTorres.com. Hit her up. Health and wealth because your health is wealth. I'm the Lunatic Libertarian, Justin Lamas, and we are out. Peace.